What's up, folks? It's Parallax Abstraction, and welcome to another indie showcase. I've got a new release for you this time, at the time of recording this, finally. And this is something that caught my attention a few months ago, actually, when they put out a demo for it on the PC. This is called Inertial Drift, and it pitches itself as a twin-stick arcade racing game. And I was like, okay, you got my attention there. I tend to like the arcadey racing games more than the more simulatory type ones. And I always thought stuff that focused on drifting was kind of interesting. So it is out now, and it's on a few different platforms. It's on PC, PS4, and Switch, and Xbox One on their official site is listed as coming soon, so I'm guessing we're going to see that fairly soon here. You can also still play the Sunset Prologue, which is the demo, so you have the opportunity to take a look at this yourself if you want. It's about 18 bucks US, so that comes up to 22 something Canadian. There's some other currencies right there. And I'm a little mixed on this one, to be honest with you. Well, I'm going to show it to you here, but it is very focused on one thing that I'm going to say it does pretty well, but also it's only focused on that one thing. And while this can be interesting in a somewhat casual way, I think some people are going to really take to this. To me, I'm not so sure anyway. So it's got this pretty cool anime intro here that I actually think is kind of cool. I'm going to skip that for now, just because it's a little bit lengthy, but it's pretty cool. So I would, if you're playing this on PC, highly recommend playing this with a controller as opposed to a keyboard and mouse, though you can do both, which is very nice. Sorry, I just got to turn the audio up a little bit there. And the thing about this game is it does have a lot of stuff to do in it. So there is a story mode, which I'll show you a little bit of. There's a challenge mode, there's an arcade mode, there's a Grand Prix mode, which is kind of like a challenge mode where you have to do a series of particular kinds of events with limited retries. It does have full split screen and online play as well. So it brings a lot of features to the table. Unfortunately, as I'm recording this, we're 3 days off of release, and I have never been able to find an online match. So I can't tell you if that's any good or if it works well or not. I wish I could. But I tried multiple times. I sat at matchmaking for sometimes 10-15 minutes. It never found a game in any mode. So, unfortunate. But, yeah, so I will show you. I've done a couple of the different stories in this. There are multiple different characters here that you can do story mode for that range in difficulty. Basically, different kinds of cars. And you see there are characters here. There's a little bit of dialogue. The characters in the story in this are all pretty forgettable. It's just about a series of people who are trying to get good enough to hold their own against bigger racers is basically what it is. They talk about the Summer Grand Prix a lot, which is something that never happens. I don't know if maybe that's something you unlock if you beat all the character stories. I'm not sure. So there's a bunch of dialogue in between races. I don't know. I don't find any of the characters or the story that compelling, but it's kind of neat that they put some effort into that, and they all have their own different personalities, and you can see here they're all attached to different cars. So, and you can see the different stats there, including difficulty. So I've beaten the first two stories, and I've done a little bit of the third story, and I haven't done the fourth one yet. The fourth one looks like it's going to be pretty difficult. So I'll show you a little bit about how this works here. So there are two difficulties. You only unlock Extra Crispy when you've beaten one story mode. I'm going to say the default difficulty in this is pretty easy. I've experienced very little challenge, but at the same time, I've also experienced some weirdly large difficulty spikes at times. Like sometimes, most of the races will be very easy, and then I'll have one where I'm just like, what the heck? Like this one got really, really tough. So there's various different objectives you'll have to do. There's only a handful of tracks. Some of them are time attacks, some of them are races. You can clip through the other drivers in this, which they come up with a kind of ridiculous narrative reason for why that is. Some of them are ghost races. Some of them, my favorite kinds, are drift events where you have to basically do stunts and drive kind of dangerously in order to rack up points, things like that. It's fairly standard stuff. And the key point of this is that while it is a racing game, it's all about the drift. So they call this a twin-stick racing game, and that's because you actually steer in two different ways. You can steer with either the left or the right stick, which gives you a fairly mild turning of the wheel, if you will. But if you push them both, which you can see I'm doing here, you will sort of get a much more extended turn, which will then lead to a drift. And then if you tap the brakes, as you see there, you will really, really lean into the turn. Now, I'm not doing this very well here because I'm doing, I'm sort of not playing this very well to demonstrate it. The different tracks get a little bit more complicated as you go. Sometimes you'll have to do short lengths of races. Sometimes you'll have to do longer lengths, or you'll have to do full runs of the entire track, things like that. So you see, I kind of did really poorly there, but here we go. So when you're doing like ghost races like this, it takes basically the average of your lap time over 3 different laps to determine that. Now, I think with this kind of race, it might just be you get 3 laps in which to beat the target time, which is what the ghost is based on here. So you see what you have here. Now, this is the easiest track, so this one is not too difficult, but there are other tracks that have opportunities to run off the road. You can bang the car into the wall, which will obviously slow you down quite a bit. You can't damage your car or destroy your car in this. So you can just be, you know, pinballing off the walls all you want. You'll never die in this. And as we said before, you can't run into other drivers. There's no traffic, and even in the races where you're racing against another actual driver as opposed to a ghost, it's one-on-one. That's it. There's no field, racing field that you're going through. There we go. There's no racing field that you're going through. There's no any traffic to avoid, anything like that. You know, the idea about this is these are people who kind of go on these treks to these more rural areas in order to do their races. And that's the bulk of the gameplay, to be honest with you. So I'm going to go into the challenge mode here. By doing the story mode, you also unlock other cars that you can use in different scenarios, like the challenge mode or online or whatnot. And the cars, I will give them this, that there is a fair amount of difference in terms of the cars. Some of them, so here's a challenge mode right here. Some of them can be fairly difficult to drift. Some of them you gotta really pre-steer into the turns to do it. They definitely don't all handle the same. Some obviously, as is common in a lot of racing games, have a lot of different acceleration, different braking curves, different things like that. So as you unlock these different cars and start playing with them, you will definitely experience, you will have a very different experience in terms of how the drifting works. They don't all drive the same. Like this one here, for example, this is a bigger car and it's heavier. So if I want to start turning, you see that was me holding both sticks. So it can drift without having to turn as much. But when you're coming up on a very sharp turn like this, you have really got to start your drift early or you're going to totally miss it and end up hitting into the wall. So it's a very different paradigm and a very different method of attacking the drift that you have to do with this car. And that's pretty cool. The problem is that the majority of the content, I would say, at least so far in my play, has been the story mode. And the story mode, the cars are locked to whatever character you're trying to play through. And you've got to play through them all if you want to unlock everything else. The challenge modes are cool, but the challenges are basically, there's only one per car. And I've done over half of them already, I think. The Grand Prix I find to be the most interesting mode, just because that is a series of different events, supposedly of increasing difficulty, and you've really got to sort of dig in and focus on those, because you only get so many attempts to do it, and if you fail too often, then it's game over. But a problem with the challenges, and this is what I've run into a couple of times now, is I talked before about the difficulty curve, and that is the real thing. I did a challenge mode where 4 out of the 5 events that I had to do were trivially easy, and then the last one was absolutely brutal. I couldn't even get close to beating it. So I got all the way to the end going, okay, this is pretty good, and then the game was just like, yeah, all of a sudden it's become the Dark Souls of drifting, Drift Souls, if you will. And I was like, okay, a little bit more of a gradual ramp rather than a sudden cliff would have kind of been nice, you know? And that's the thing with this, is in many ways, I don't know if this is really what it's aiming to be, but it feels kind of like a casual game, because the mechanics are very simple, and sometimes you know, there is value in the fact that, I got close on that one. There is value in the fact that they chose to focus on just one mechanic of racing and try to really narrow in on that and make that their core focus. This is really about arcade style drifting. It's not realistic, it's not a simulator, but its focus is on drifting specifically as opposed to being an all-round racing game. And I can respect that. That can be fun in its own way. But the controls are very easy to learn, which is again not a bad thing, but I just find there's except for the few points where the challenge goes way up, there just isn't much of it. You know, I put several hours into this at this point, close to 5 I think, and I've found the majority of the time there's been virtually no challenge. Most of the events I've been able to take out on my first go. Even some of the challenge things I've been able to take out on my first go, and in many cases, so in a lot of the events there's typical gold, silver, and bronze targets for times or score, but there's also a hidden platinum level that the game won't tell you about unless you achieve it. And I've gotten a lot of those, especially in the story mode, and a lot of those on my first run. I wasn't aiming for them. In fact, I discovered one when it awarded it to me and an achievement popped, and I was like, oh, that platinum award is totally a thing, apparently. And I started landing a lot of those on my first attempt. And then I even had a couple of races where, like, the first time I did it, something didn't click with me and I got, you know, at best a silver. And then I would run the race again immediately and end up with a platinum. So I was just like, oh. Because part of it as well is that while the cars differ, the tracks don't. There's only a handful of tracks in this and they're all laid out the same way. So once you've run a track a few times, you don't need to practice it anymore, really, because it's as long as you are familiar with the car that you're in, your strategy is going to be the same every time. And some of the objectives will increase to the point where you're like, where it's demanding a little bit more precision. You know, you got to take the corners a little bit better. You got to perfect your apex. You got to perfect your turn in that. There's less room for error, but it never ramps up significantly. It's always just a little less easy. Has been my experience. Again, except for those handful of missions where just out of the blue, everything spikes through the roof for no particular reason. And you're just, in that situation, you're just left kind of confused. And that's the thing for me. This, with how easy this is in general, it kind of does feel like it's designed to be more of a targeted casual game. But it does have those occasional harder missions, and at least in the story mode, it does have the extra crispy difficulty for those who want to turn things up a little bit. And I'm glad that's there. But you got to kind of work for that, you know? You got to put in some time in order to get that. If you're someone who is really into a challenge, the game is going to make you spend some time with it before you're able to get that challenge that you really want. And some people are probably not gonna dig that too much. You know, I put some time into this, and this has been a very good, I call them background games a lot of the time. Games where, you know, the reason when we started this video that the audio was a little bit low is because I turned it down because I was watching YouTube or Netflix on my second screen while I was playing this for my impressions. And it's a good game for that. You know, there are some games that are good to play and to just sort of zone out to while you have something else going on. And this was good for that, and I did enjoy it for that. You know, I also do like this art style, this kind of, I don't know what you'd call it. It's kind of I guess it's sort of cartoony, more flat shaded, flat colors kind of thing. I actually do think that the look is pretty good, and it's neon without being obnoxious, you know? And I think the music is somewhat basic, but it's fitting well. It's got a good beat to it, a good energy, really sort of keeps you in the moment. There's no voice acting in this. All of the characters and stuff are text only. So you can see here, because I did the challenge with this. So by doing the story mode, you unlock the cars, the ability to do the cars challenges, and then when you do that, you can see here you've unlocked it for use in arcade, Grand Prix, and multiplayer modes. So this gives you the ability to do that, which can attack sort of different things here. So this is another race type that's kind of interesting here. This is one where this is almost more like Outrun, where you have to. There are some where you have to do drift challenges, like I said. Those ones are the ones, by the way, that I found ridiculously simple. I did some drift challenges. Every drift challenge mission I did, I absolutely slaughtered the high score target without even trying. That is actually my favorite mode to play, but it's so simple that you're just kind of like, whatever. This one is kind of like Outrun, where your goal is to actually drive for a certain amount of time before time runs out, and you extend your time by hitting checkpoints. You know, very Outrun-esque, which is another mode I kind of like. So this car here is very interesting. This is a car that really takes a long time there. So you see I'm holding both sticks here, and you can see how slow it's turning. So this is a car you've really got to lean into the brakes on when you start going into turns if you want to be able to drift really well, and you've got to start your turn very early. You know, the cars, especially when you've been doing the story mode and you're used to playing one car for a good while, there is a learning curve involved, and some of the cars will take a little while to get used to, but I find after maybe a race or two, you've already got it figured out and it's not so bad. You know, it's, again, not overtly complicated. And, you know, I put some time into this as background. I'll be honest with you, I'm probably done. I don't think I'm going to play more of the story mode. I think this kind of wore out its welcome with me. But the reason I really wanted to do this video is because I can see this being a game that does have an appeal to certain people. And I think this game is going after a certain type of player. And maybe I'm not that. You know, I'm not going to call this bad. I think it's well presented. And I think it's choosing very directly to focus on one mechanic and try to do one thing well. And it does do that. I just think they didn't do super well on the challenge element of it, and the story mode, while it's there, is pretty throwaway. I found myself skipping a lot of the dialogue in that because it didn't really have any impact on anything. There's no choices you make in the story. You know, you're not choosing to go one way or another way, or to take one character, you know, to side with one character over another. There's nothing like that. It's just kind of filler to give flavor for why these races are happening, basically. And to give each of the characters in this a little bit of backstory and personality, but it really doesn't matter, to be honest with you. So, but as you can see here, you know, even in this car that I'm not familiar with and that I've been kind of pinballing around here because I haven't really learned it that well, you see that it's very likely that I'm going to hit the gold score target here before I run out of time. Because each checkpoint gives you a fairly long amount of time, and I've only got, you know, basically 1,000 meters here, and we're going to make it. So, and again, this is a challenge mode, right? Like, this in theory should be more difficult. And while there is extra crispy mode for the story, that's just for the story. There's no higher difficulties for these modes that I'm aware of. So, you know, you're kind of like, well, all right. Again, feels very casual to me. So, but I don't necessarily think it's bad. I just don't necessarily think it's to my taste. And this might be something that jives with you. This could be a good game for the Switch, actually, because the races are relatively quick and it's something that you can kind of jump in and out of. This could be a good game for that platform, for people who want to, you know, a little something to play on the go that's more in depth than your typical mobile game. At the same time, while this isn't on mobile, and I hate, you know, touchscreen based controls, this could totally work on a mobile platform. And a lot of the mechanics and whatnot that are in this game are the kind of thing that you would see a lot on mobile. Oh wow, I almost missed that one there. I don't know what the platinum target is on this. There's a chance I might hit it. Who knows? It could definitely work on that as well. Maybe it'll end up there at some point. I don't know. You know, there are things to unlock, like there's the cars, as we've talked about. There's that you unlock. There's no cosmetics. Okay, it was just gold. So there's no cosmetics or anything like that you unlock. You know, there's obviously no microtransactions or anything like that in this game. It's all very... you're just unlocking the other cars, which is good. You know, I like the fact that everything in here is completable and that it doesn't require an amount of time. This is a game that's not necessarily going to demand a lot of your time to get the full experience out of it. And I do like the fact that they've given you a lot of different options here. Let's just try online again, just for the heck of it. But yeah, it's trying to focus on a very specific point, and I think it's doing that well, but it just doesn't do enough to really hold on with me, to hold my attention for a long period of time. You know, after a little bit, I was just kind of like, yeah, all right, I've kind of seen this, and that's that. And yeah, as you can see here, Either the matchmaking's broken or there's no population for this online, at least on a PC right now, 3 days after release. So that's too bad, because I respect any developer, because putting online in a game takes a lot of time and effort. And I respect any developer that's willing to do that. But sometimes it looks like it just doesn't hit in that regard. So yeah, so that is Inertial Drift, everybody. Hope I gave you a little bit of an idea of what it's about, and you can determine whether or not this is for you. Developed by Level 91 Entertainment and published by PQube, who has done a variety of different kinds of interesting things. It is on Steam, PS4, and Switch right now, and it apparently is coming to the Xbox One eventually. It is under $20. You can get some good time out of this, you know, for sure. But, you know, just know what you're getting into here, and that this is a rather casual experience. But yeah, if you are interested in picking this up, you can see the Fanatical link up there. If you look in the description below, there's affiliate links to a few different stores where you can get legit Steam keys. If you do decide to do that, clicking those links before you buy helps out my channel as well as Extra Life, which I would appreciate very much. And if you did like what you saw here, please click all the things, subscribe, hit the bell, thumbs up, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this. Or are there other good casual racing games out there that you think are interesting or might be a little, you know, might scratch that itch for people who are really into that? I'd be curious to know about that as well. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I will see you on the next episode of Indie Showcase. You folks have yourselves a good one. Take it easy, folks.